I'm Brina Guerin, and you're listening to Hex Positive. Welcome, witches. This is episode 5 of Hex Positive. I'm your host, Brina Guerin, and today we've got a special treat for you. In this virtual studio we call the internet, we've got our very first guest host. They're Wiccan, they're wonderful, and their show was a huge inspiration for Hex Positive. All the way from our sibling podcast, BS Free Witchcraft, we've got Trey Dorn. Welcome, Trey.
I'm a person.
Yes, yes, in fact, you are. Real quick for those poor souls who don't know you yet, just rattle off a little bit about yourself.
I am the old curmudgeon of the internet. No, I've been a practicing Wiccan for over 20 years. I also do I do too many things. I co-founded the Nerd and Tie Network with some friends, which this show is on. I do a bunch of podcasts. I do webcomics. I've co-founded an anime convention. I'm a weird person.
You're a workhorse. My goodness.
That's people ask me how I have time to do all the stuff I do, and my response, as usual, is because I do it all quite poorly.
Well, personal opinion, I think you do it just fine, obviously. So thanks so much for being on the show today. Chatting about witchy stuff with you, whether it's on Discord or on Skype, is always a good time. I've been looking forward to this because, you know, listening to you spill tea is like a pastime now. Has been since I started listening to BS Free. And that's part of what gave me that final push, along with, you know, people putting boots in my butt for, hey, you've been talking about starting a podcast for a year. Why don't you do it? And then just listening to BS Free was like, you know what? Yeah.
I, if anything, have strong opinions, and I'm not afraid to say them very, very directly.
And we really, really appreciate that here. I appreciate that immensely. I mean, there's such a thing as tact, which you always do exercise, and manners, of course, which you exercise as well. But there is something to be said for speaking directly when speaking directly is called for. So, yeah, speaking of speaking directly, today we're going to be digging into some more pagan problems, which might be becoming my brand. I'm not sure. But today we're talking about science denial in the witchcraft community. Listeners, buckle up. We are about to spill the tea, and you are all in the splash zone. So, most witches are good at exercising their common sense and keeping sight of, science and practical knowledge and such like. But there's this weird school of thought, which quite frankly is way too large for my taste, that likes to try and insist that witchcraft and magic is not only equal to, but superior to science. This mostly seems to focus on medicine from what I've seen, with witches who are anti-vaxxers, witches who tout homeopathy and herbal cures over modern medical treatments, including things like chemo, witches who tell people not to take their meds because it'll diminish psychic abilities or whatever. It really boggles me. Like, where is the sense in all this? Is this something that's being touted by modern writers and influencers? Or is it just that some people came to witchcraft already having these beliefs, and now they're just using the craft to prop up their argument? Trey, your thoughts?
So I think really what a lot of this comes down to is that you have people who are attracted to magical thinking in the sense that, like, if they believe in something, it must be so. And, well, I mean, obviously there's a level of belief and intent in any form of witchcraft, at least in most modern paradigms of witchcraft. These are the people who, it's not so much that like they are witches who got into homeopathy, but so much as they are people who are into homeopathy who got into witchcraft. You know what I mean? Like, I think the denial comes first, because I grew up in a very scientifically literate household. We are, and my wife has got her master's working in a virology lab. We take science very seriously in this household. Like, there's a lot of what I refer to as hippy dippy nonsense that came through the New Age movement, which has a ton of overlap with the neo-pagan movement.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, that's like the belief in homeopathy, like, really just comes down to, I don't know if I want to say bad science literacy combined with magical thinking combined with just being dumb. I'm sorry, homeopathic stuff is just, guys, it's the placebo effect in action.
Mm-hmm.
When they talk about like the levels of dilution of like some of these things, like the idea where like, oh, we take this water and it had this element, and then we did, we diluted it by this much, by X numbers, and like the number of particles of like atoms of whatever's supposed to be in there is actually usually statistically none.
Yeah.
Based on
Mm-hmm.
the my favorite thing was that CVS was selling a homeopathic laxative,
Oh God.
which teenagers started buying because you could buy it without ID because it's supposed to be a laxative. Why would you require ID? All it was alcohol. It was just straight. It was just drinkable alcohol. I forget what form it was in, but it was alcohol, and so teenagers were buying it all up and then getting drunk.
Oh my goodness. Well, probably because it was being sold as
Yeah,
a tincture.
right. They
Yeah.
didn't have to. They didn't have to have ID, but it was just.
Oh my
I
goodness.
don't remember the proof, but yeah,
Well, considering that most tinctures call for something that's about vodka strength, that should give you an idea.
yeah,
Actually, part of what got me into witchcraft was the study of natural medicine, and my mom, for a good while, and I'm not sure if she still is actually. We haven't discussed it in a bit, but she used to be very, very into homeopathic medicine because of uh, a certain physician that she consulted with for a while, who recommended some stuff that was just absolute bunk, and it was just those little bottles of water that you like sprayed on your skin, and it was supposed to relieve a headache or whatever. Yeah, I mean, I took basically sugar pills after I got my wisdom teeth out. It helped me not at all. I do still keep like arnica gel in the house every once in a while because it helps with like bruises sometimes, but that's yeah, other than that, it's not great. The issue that I have with it is when people start treating their children and their pets with it, and it's
yeah.
like, no, big capital no, no. If there is something the matter with a child or an animal, you really super, super need to go to an actual doctor
Yeah.
and get them actual medicine, because the best that any home remedy can do, and that's homeopathy, herbal cures, whatever, the best that can usually do is like help alleviate symptoms. It's not going to cure anything, it's not going to fix anything. And, if you want to put yourself through that, extra effort and that extra bother, that's fine. But if you're going to put that on somebody else, that's just, it seems very negligent.
Well, there are two types. Alternative medicine tends to fall into two categories. Category one are things that are absolute bunk and don't do anything, and you're lucky if you just get the placebo effect to kick in. And then the other category are effectively things that are like herbs and things like that that actually do have a physiological effect on you, but you need to make sure you're telling your doctor if you take them, because they can interact with other medications, because it's just pretty much just like taking a raw medication,
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
and without any dosing knowledge.
Oh God, yes. Or sometimes without even like any preparation knowledge. People
Yeah.
just throw it in a cup with hot water and think that that's the thing and end up drinking, wintergreen mugwort tea. And it's like, no, don't do that. Put it down. Put it down.
You know way more about herbs than I do, so I'll just take your word for it. That's a bad thing.
Well, wintergreen, while it smells really good and is used for, a flavoring for gums and for mints and everything, past that is not meant to be taken internally, especially not in the raw form. The entire plant is actually poisonous.
All I know about wintergreen is that if you bite the lifesaver,
It turns into a lightsaber
in the dark, it sparks because of
Yes.
the way the sugars compress and that exact like chemical composition.
Yep.
I can
I've done
speak
that.
words.
It's cool.
I podcast a lot. You can tell by how I just perfectly clearly speak everything that I'm trying to say, and I never stumble over words ever.
We words real good here. Yes.
The grand secret to BS Free Witchcraft is the high number of takes that no one ever hears.
Oh, yeah. I think the grand secret to this episode might be some editing, but we'll be fine. We'll be fine.
Fine, leave in as many flubs of mine as you want. Like it
makes us personable.
I have no shame.
It makes us relatable. It's all good. But yeah, like I was saying, a lot of my background in witchcraft began with my interest in herbal medicine, and so when I came in, I've said before, part of my stepping stone really was somebody handed me a copy of Cunningham's Encyclopedia of Magical Herbs, and I haven't really looked back. But then, looking at other witchcraft books, I would see, here's your third eye tea, or your divination tea, or usually something to do with psychic powers that just involved dumping mugwort into whatever blend you were using. And part of me was kind of going, well, wait, these people have been at this for a lot longer than I have. Maybe they know something I don't. And yes. And the other part of me was sitting back with my physician's desk reference going, no, don't do that. In general, just for reference, mugwort does have psychoactive properties, but not nearly as strong as some people think it does. And the side effects related to it, especially if you happen to be pregnant, are really not great. And it will interact with depression meds, among other things. And you should really watch your use of it internally if you have any sort of heart condition, or if you're allergic to ragweed.
What if you really want to make your baby psychic?
There are other ways. I would honestly recommend like full moon rituals over a pregnant belly to make your baby psychic over drinking mugwort tea while you're pregnant. Because if you do that too often, you won't be having a baby. So, yeah, there's that.
Yeah.
But yeah, and I just see a lot of not actually. I should amend that before I speak. I don't see as much of this particular brand of magical thinking as I used to, even like 5 years ago, which is reassuring. I think that there is much more practical thought in the community than there used to be. But, now that we're getting back into shorter form conversations on things like TikTok and Twitter, there's not as much in-depth discussion of what goes on. It's just people, having 10 seconds or 200 characters to say what they want to say. And it's difficult to get a conversation going, and it's difficult to include all the caveats of things that should be included.
What, you mean like you can't get solid scientific information out of an aesthetic post?
Generally, no, not unless it's like a really sparkly version of, the summary page of a study from Johns Hopkins or something.
And are you trying to tell me that witchcraft posts on social media sites are largely unsourced and don't necessarily have any solid backing?
How'd you know?
And if you're lucky, they've cited a 90s Llewellyn book that also wasn't good.
Oh, yeah. Actually, speaking of, oh my goodness, uh, just this past week on Tumblr, I had to respond because I would have like bitten something in half, like gnawed through a table leg if I hadn't. Somebody posted, and I'm not going to name names, somebody posted a recipe for red clover tea, citing Sybil Leek of all people, to say that, oh, just it was literally just red clover and hot water and maybe honey for flavoring, and that was it. And they're like, oh yeah, this is a tea for general health. Okay, fine. That will prevent cancer. Wait, what? And other serious diseases. That was it. That was the post.
Which oh, brain dying
Yeah, that's
slowly.
kind
I
of what
saw that.
happened to me.
I saw that post.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
Fred. Okay, witchcraft ain't gonna cure cancer, guys. I'm sorry. It's like,
And neither will red clover tea. It just won't, and it won't prevent it either. Well, that was the claim, and I feel it is important to differentiate. They weren't necessarily saying it would cure cancer. They said it would prevent it. No,
no,
no
it won't.
sourcing on how. Not even saying what other quote unquote serious diseases it was supposed to prevent. All very nebulous. And I did get into a, let's say, spirited discussion with a few people afterward, off site, just about, hey, the somebody cited the whole wisdom of the ancients thing, which,
The
oh,
ancients didn't know shit. I'm sorry.
thank
It's
you.
so that's why they were ancient. So
Yes.
this is really the thing. So I know I said, like, I don't want to, like, when I say that magic won't cure cancer, I don't mean like don't ever use magic for healing, and like definitely help, because actually we've, there have been studies that show that like a person's attitude through these things helps their survival chances. And
Yes.
so, like, but we use the medicine first. Like,
Yes.
see, we people have this romantic image of the witch healer in the woods with their herbs and all that stuff, but that's, guess what medicine is?
Mm-hmm.
It's
Yeah.
That's the stuff that worked out of that stuff, put
Yeah.
in a unfortunately highly capitalist system in America. But it's the medicine itself is still good. It's so you use the medicine first, and if you want to supplement that with witchcraft, good, because again, we've shown that like even just like having positive outlook has helped people's chances and odds of recovery. So using magic to help boost recovery is good, but it ain't gonna do shit without the magic. Pardon
Oh
my
yeah.
language. I don't know if you have
Oh
the
no, no.
explicit flag.
Well, we're gonna have one for this episode, because fuck it.
Yeah.
I want to be able to swear.
Sorry, I'm
Uh,
used to being on my show.
oh
It's
no, it's all good. We'll have one for this episode. It'll be fun. It'll be fun.
my whole show is marked explicit at the base level to prevent. Well, I don't want anyone saying that. I don't want. Yeah, I come from the '90s, man. I am always paranoid about some pearl clutching mother angry that I have introduced their child to witchcraft. So at least if I put the explicit flag, I said it was clearly not intended for children.
Oh, that's lovely.
I mean, I've got no problem with younger people. I have no problem with I'm secretly have no problem with minors listening to my show, but it's.
Yeah, but there are
If
some people who get lawsuit happy
I'm just
with that
saying that,
nonsense.
like, if your kid's listening to my show, it's because you've left them unsupervised, and so it's not my fault.
Yep. Yep. There's that. But what you were saying about the witch in the woods with the healing
Yeah,
herbs, it's
and
like, yeah, exactly. Modern medicine is like, oh, witches used to make willow bark tea, and now we have aspirin. It's literally the same stuff, just compressed down into an easy to take pill form that is, scientifically tested, and more importantly, safety tested so that you know you're getting something that's going to be effective. And now it also comes with, interaction warnings. So it's like, hey,
Yeah.
if you have heart conditions, be careful how you take aspirin.
It's Tim Minchin, the comedian Tim Minchin there's a quote of his from one of his routines in which the line is, do you know what they call alternative medicine that works?
Medicine.
Medicine.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If it consistently works, it just becomes medicine.
Yeah.
So
And
it's
I can understand like the whole big pharma nonsense and the fact that having all these problems with the capitalist use of medication, and that it's so expensive and difficult for people to get what they need. I understand having a problem with that. I have a problem with that, but it doesn't mean that I'm going to tell someone not to go to chemo or not to take their meds because somehow witchcraft is nebulously better, even though it's not.
it's
I
not.
mean, you should always supplement any magic, full stop. Always
This is
supplement magic with practical action, no matter what it is, and especially with healing.
here's the easy metaphor. Like people who try to apply like magic to health stuff. I just want to say, if you're a witch and your house is on fire and you're in the house, what are you going to do? Are you going to call the fire department, or are you going to use magic to put out the fire? Any
Mm.
reasonable person is going to say, well, clearly, my magic is not strong enough to put out the fire that is in my living room, right?
Yep.
You're not going to try to do that. That's your body, man. Like
Yep.
that's it. That's the situation you're in.
Yep. And you only get one. So, reincarnation aside, for this lifetime, this one body's all you got. So you got to give yourself the best possible chance of, recovering from whatever you're ill with or dealing with whatever, your brain happens to be doing. Which actually brings me to my next point. Um, Witches who tell other witches not to take medicine for mental health or meds with psychoactive effects because it will quote unquote dull their abilities, whether it's psychic abilities or magical abilities or what have you. This is like the new, you know, take chamomile tea if you have a cold instead of going to the doctor and getting an antibiotic. Well, maybe not antibiotics for a cold, but if you have, you know what I mean.
There's
Uh,
yeah, it's and people like non-witches have been like talking about this, like for artists, or like, oh, don't take your depression meds because
yeah,
it'll dilute your art. I'm like, no, it won't. I it's mental health is an important thing to take care of.
yeah,
Okay, so when you take your meds, if you have depression, the whole point of the drug is to even out and have your brain produce chemicals that it's supposed to be making but isn't, right? Like that is the theory. Like that's the play. When you
if
take
you
an
can't make your own
antidepressant,
neurotransmitters, store bought is fine.
yet somehow neurotypical witches, which I swear exist, I I've met them. They are perfectly capable of performing magic with that brain chemistry. It's like, I do not have depression. My brain makes happy chemicals fine. My magic is not diluted by the fact that my brain can make happy chemicals.
Absolutely.
I mean, I've got generalized anxiety disorder, which is a whole other mess, but
Oof, yeah.
I also spent years and years in therapy for that and have developed the tools which make it so I don't need medication right now, and I am functional as an adult. But there would be no shame if I did have to take something.
Exactly. I mean, being a tortured genius, whether as an artist or a witch or just in general, is a very romantic idea, but the practical experience of it sucks. And it's not something that I would wish on anybody. It's not something that you need or want in your life to be considered valid as a creator of anything or a practitioner of anything. If your ability only manifests when you haven't taken your meds, then there's a real good chance that it's a symptom of something going on in your brain that maybe you need to take care of. There's no psychic or magical or artistic ability that's worth being robbed of your ability to, function.
Yeah, I mean, I guess like, even if even if we would accept the idea that taking medication would blunt your magical abilities, even if we accepted that, I will tell you, I would rather have no magical abilities and be happy.
Same.
It's like, I'm gonna tell, like, for me, I'm a Wiccan, so this is also, my religious experience, and the experiences that I've had spiritually with my practice are very, very important to me. I I would rather live my life without those experiences and be happy.
Exactly. Exactly. I mean, you and I have discussed some of what went on in the house I lived in when I was a teenager. Um, it was because of all that I was on medication at the time for separate issues, mood stabilizers, stuff for ADHD. Representation matters. I'm speaking about it openly. Um, I'm not medicated now, but I was pretty heavily medicated then. And in addition to that, I actually made a concerted effort to, close off that part of my perception, because as cool as it would be, I think, to be able to like switch that on now when I actually know how to handle it, I didn't know how to handle it then. I didn't know what I was doing. I had no access to any resources that could have helped me handle it in a healthy way. So, of course, your mileage may vary for anyone listening, but for me, it was much more important to maintain my sanity and my ability to tell what was real and what wasn't than to say, hey, I can see and talk to ghosts. And I think that, you know, when you
Also,
have
ghosts
that,
are a bunch of dicks, and you don't want to talk to them anyway.
oh my God, yes.
The
Oh, such a
worst.
pain in the ass. But yeah, and I think that any witch with, any sort of extrasensory, clairvoyant, clair whatever stuff going on, that is a judgment call that should be made. It's like, hey, is being able to do this worth the stress that it puts on you and the strain to your perception and your brain and your heart? You got to think of that, when you're making these calls. And sometimes, as neat as it is to be able to say, hey, I can do X, Y, and Z, you do need to be able to step back and be like, no, I got to take care of myself first. You can't serve from an empty cauldron, as someone so pointedly said to me recently. So, keep your cauldron full. You got to take care of yourself. And sometimes that means making a tough call.
Yeah. And again, there are neurotypical witches who are doing just fine. So that means, being on your medication. You know what? Here's the thing: is I think it's because things do feel differently. You know what I mean? And so if you're used to finding your groove the way that you feel like normally, and it's not there, that can be disconcerting. But you
Mhm.
just have to learn to find it in a new way. It's,
Yeah, and there's always a handful of ways to do a thing. There's always another method. There's always something else that you can try. Uh, there's always different things you can explore, and it is really important to consider which one is going to impact your health in the least negative way. I know that's a terrible way of putting it, but sometimes, there's a choice between crap and worse crap. So there's always other options available, and you should always go with the one that is least harmful to your physical and mental health, even when your options all seem kind of equally weird, shall we say.
I hate to be the Wiccan in the room, but
Oh, go for it. Go for it.
the Wiccan read is "and it harm none, do as you will." You're a person who can be harmed.
Yeah. That does
You're supposed
include
to be.
yourself.
It includes yourself.
Yeah.
I mean, if you follow that like I do, but you don't have to.
Well, I mean, even if you're not a person who uh, subscribes to the Wiccan Read, and I don't, um, there is definitely something to be said for, hey, self care needs to be part of your craft, and your craft should not be so strenuous that it causes you harm. It should not
Right.
be something that causes you harm in a significant and severe way. We'll be back with more Hex Positive after this brief sponsored break. This episode of Hex Positive was brought to you by the Vagabond Tabby. We all care about the ingredients that go into our bath and body products. We want to feel great and smell great without a bunch of extra crap that dries out our skin or pollutes the environment after we rinse it off. That's where the Vagabond Tabby comes in. Owner, proprietor, and certified cat mom Kate uses only the safest natural materials, often organic or wildcrafted, for her soaps and bath products, and researches all her ingredients for safety, effectiveness, and environmental impact. Why? Because it matters. Whether you're scrubbing the largest organ on your body, that's your skin, silly, relaxing with a cup of herbal tea, or applying bug spray to your near and dear, wouldn't you feel better knowing it's not only high quality, but safe for you and the planet? I recently picked up the Divine Luna Face Soap and the Wicked Girls Saving Ourselves soap from this shop, and I am in love. My face feels like it's gotten brand new skin, and I smell like a witch on a mission. Head on over to thevagabondtabby.com to check out the vast array of bath and body products they have in stock. Life is hard right now. We could all use a little pampering. Check out the shop on Twitter and Instagram, and make sure to say hi to Kate and the kitties while you're there. You only get one body. Take good care of it with the help of the Vagabond Tabby. Good stuff for your skin, without all the crap. And now, back to the show.
So what I think is interesting about when we talk about science denial and witchcraft, is what's interesting to me is that it's different than we talk about science denial in general, at least in the United States and around the world. Like, because usually when you talk about science denial, it's more than one thing. Like, obviously, climate change. There's an entire party political party that is dedicated to denying that climate change is happening, even though it is. But the kind of science denial that you'll find in the witchcraft community is so much more focused on health. It's the anti-vax movement has, much to the annoyance of some of us, there have been quite a few Wiccans involved in that. I remember finding an online discussion years ago in which some Wiccan was trying to use their religion to get an exemption from getting their kid vaccinations.
Oh,
And
geez.
everyone was like, there's nothing in Wicca that says you can't get a vaccination. There's no, it was this whole message thread of people trying to explain that, I mean, whether you believe that or not, there's nothing in the religion that you're trying to, but like, and so like there are Wiccan groups that got involved with anti-vax movements. It's just so ridiculous and focused. And I think it's interesting because it's like, obviously, witchcraft movement has had a long history with like the environmental movement. It's, we are, at least those of us who came from the neo-pagan paths, like nature is a huge part of, it's part of the defining thing about the neo-pagan movement is nature-based religions is usually one of like the top 3 sentences that people will talk about. But there's this crossover on vaccines and on health-related stuff, and where they end up on the same side as the science deniers. And it's just so frustrating, because what is a vaccine other than like most vaccines use, there's more than one kind of vaccine. There's live vaccines, but there are also vaccines where effectively you're training your immune system to deal with a virus that it's never encountered before. What is that other than, I mean, like, how is that not just an elaborate spell?
Yeah, if you think about it. I mean, ooh, actually, that would be very interesting if, like, the scientific or the chemical names for something would be recited as an incantation for a healing spell. That'd just be neat.
Well, but like, so I mean, medicine is, if anything, material components.
Mm-hmm.
It's we like I think this is, and I blame a lot of this on kind of the well, actually the very origins of how I come into witchcraft, where I do mostly energy work. I don't usually use material stuff, but like historically, like if you talk about forms of witchcraft, usually it's concoctions, potions, things like that. What is medicine other than a very effective potion?
Yes. Oh, that's a beautiful way of looking at it. I'm gonna keep that in my back pocket for later. I like that. I like it a lot. Very cool.
So that's why we use the medicine first. You use the
Yes.
strongest magics first, and the
Yes.
strongest one is medicine
Yes. There you
because it
go.
works.
Oof, that's beautiful. Well said. And speaking of potions, oh my gracious, there's something I see getting put into a lot of potions that folks are mistaking for actual medicine, and that's essential oils.
Oh
And we'd
God,
be remiss if we didn't mention this in the same breath as homeopathy and anti-vaxxing. Um,
hate essential.
Essential oils are aromatherapy; they're not medicine. Full
Yeah,
stop.
no, my mom keeps buying essential oils, but she's
So,
not like using them as a cure. She just likes the way they smell.
okay, well that's
So it's
fine.
fine.
That's what they're for.
Right. It's like, and occasionally, like she'll use like peppermint to open up her sinuses, but that's because like that's what it does.
Well,
Like
yeah.
it's like just using, putting a dab of the essential oil form like under her nose or something like that is not a huge deal, but
Yeah, it's not
not
like
for
she's
internal
snorting it.
use.
Yeah. Yeah, do
Not
not
for
snort the
internal
peppermint.
use. Uh,
Uh,
just I hate essential oils so much.
I know. It's
And
it's
and there's
literally the new snake oil.
well, it's multi-level marketing most of the time with these
Yeah,
places.
which is
And
worse. Boy.
like have you seen the Bob's Burgers episode?
Yes, actually I was just thinking about that, about the sister Gail with the two vials of peppermint up her nose. Yeah. That's what it always reminds me of. It's like, "Ooh, this one is good for, this, that, or the other thing." And I'm, again, just sitting back with the physician's desk reference going, "No, it's not. No,
It's
put it down.
like
Stop telling people to ingest it."
so like that became such a so I stepped out of the general witchcraft community for a long time because of some negative experiences. Like I was heavily involved when I was, younger in my early 20s and in my mid 20s, and then I kind of just like got so sick of stuff that I just kind of stepped away for a long period of time. Like I kept practicing witchcraft. I didn't stop being a witch, but I stopped talking to other witches because, and then I came back. When I came back, essential oils had like blown up in the meanwhile, and it was just one of these things. I'm just like, no, please stop. Why?
I would have
Like,
hoped you'd all gotten smarter. What is this?
oh, no one ever
Yeah.
gets smarter. And witchcraft is always going to be something that new people are always going to get invested in right away, and then only a small percentage stick around. It's
Yeah.
dabbling is good, and
Mhm.
this is not a criticism of this behavior, because I think that the only way for someone to know whether or not they actually want to stick with something is to try it. And
Yes.
so, but that always means that, like, especially in online spaces and in communities, there's always going to be a huge number of people who are inexperienced, who are jumping into this for the first time. And so it makes it much more susceptible to fads. It makes it much more susceptible to, the um, bad information gets passed around a lot faster because of this too. But it always makes it more susceptible to like these trends, like essential oils suddenly becoming the hot new thing, whereas those of us who are old and cranky just kind of go, sure,
This, oh, not this again. Oh,
not this is, I mean, like, guys, at least crystals are pretty and don't smell. Okay, so another thing is that like I have a lot of migraine triggers that are
same.
scent based, and
Ooh.
so um I have a lot of scent-based migraine triggers, and so many of these things give me a massive headache. If you buy like 20 crystals and have them in the same room with me, that's not going to give me a headache.
Well, not unless their light refracts off of them in a certain way, I suppose.
But I don't I don't tend to get light related headaches.
Oh, you're so
So
lucky.
I am.
All of my triggers are light related.
All of mine are scent related.
Oh.
So it's like, oh, you've made this world unpleasant for me. This is
Oh.
like, I don't buy scented candles.
Oh, wow.
Like,
Oof.
some scented candles are okay, but enough of them are really bad that, like, I'm just like, nope, nope. Like, I've got a cinnamon candle, but it's like actual cinnamon sticks, and cinnamon is not a trigger for me, so it's good.
Nice.
But it's but like scented can't like, but that's not a, like, the candle itself is not scented. They're just cinnamon sticks embedded in the candle, so when those heat up, they smell, and it's
Oh, that
nice and
sounds
lovely.
nice.
But like, that doesn't bother me because it's not oils in the wax. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So
a lot of scented candles, you know, even if they use natural oils or you know, natural scent extracts or whatever, in order to make the scent spread throughout a room, they're so oversaturated that if
yeah,
someone has, you know, scent-based migraine triggers, it will just put them on the floor.
like, so I'm a witch who can't deal with scented candles. What do you think I'm going to do about essential oils?
But that actually brings up a very good point. You know, when you're doing your magic, you have to be aware of the other people in your household and the other people in your general environment, and if they have, you know, headache triggers or health triggers or allergies of any kind, you need to be aware of what those are, and you need to, you know, be considerate of that when you're doing your work. And that includes not telling people to take certain herbal cures if they're on other medication or if they have a health condition that could be negatively affected by it. Actually, that is something else that I've seen is witches claiming that they can practice medicine without licensing or proper training because, you know, they read a few books on herbalism.
Oh
And
God.
yeah, I'm like, you can be a naturopath or a homeopath or whatever and use those treatments for yourself. That's completely fine. But when you start recommending them to other people, especially outside your household, when you start using them on other people, on your children, on your pets, that gets real dangerous real fast, and just for a swath of reasons, not the least of which is the possible dangers to other people's health. You shouldn't do it. If you want to mess with your own health, that's fine, but you shouldn't be making that decision for, you know, other people.
Nobody cares if you poison yourself, but when you poison other people, that's when people get angry.
Oh yeah, that's literally what they, you know, put people on trial for is, you know, oh, you used, you know, yeah, you're a healer or whatever, but your cure didn't work, or it made someone sicker, or it killed them. So guess where you're going? Uh, yes, insert Monty Python sound cues here. Yeah, I mean, we're not turning anyone into newts anymore, regardless of how much I'd like to some days.
No, no, we're not.
But it gets better. But yes, and it should be mentioned just because, you know, we're being wonderfully salty and curmudgeonly here, which I'm greatly enjoying. Listeners, please don't feel like we're calling you stupid, or that we're saying you're unintelligent, or that you don't know what you're talking about,
I mean, I might be saying you don't know what you're talking about.
or that you're not valid as a witch. If you do these things, you are still completely valid. You're
Oh,
always valid.
let's
Just
be really clear. Like,
yeah,
hey,
just
if you're a witch who wants to use essential oils, great.
oh
Just
yeah,
don't
just
drink them.
be safe. You need to be safe. You need to have common sense. You gotta do your research. And this is why I always recommend to anyone who asks, and probably anyone who listens, and a few people that don't wanna, that, if you're going to be getting a magical education, and especially if you're studying as a solitary witch, you need to have practical study along with it. And the biggest one that I cite is, if you're going to be working with herbs, you need to know what they do, and you need to know how to use them safely.
I think the easy way to think about this is that we're podcasters. We're deeply invested in you making it to the next month's episode alive.
Oh my God, yes. Very, very deeply. And as an author, I'm invested in you still being able to read and enjoy my books. So, yes, most
people
most
can't
definitely
recommend podcasts and books to other people.
And also, then you won't be in the world making it more beautiful with your lovely presence and your amazing witchcraft. So
sure, that too. But the important thing is the listening to podcasts and telling people about books.
You're the best curmudgeon ever. So fun. So this is easily going to be the longest episode of Hex Positive thus far. I'm super enjoying it, but I did want to just go back to that red clover thing real fast before we wrap up.
Red clover, send cancer over. Got it. Yeah.
Red clover, send common sense over. The funniest part to me, after the whole discussion where it was like, oh, well, sometimes you have to look to ancient sources. And I was like, honey, if all you're using is ancient sources, you need to update. Google exists, modern medical studies exist, so on and so forth. The funniest part to me is that not long after, this very same person mentioned that they had gotten a contract with Llewellyn.
Oh, God.
I laughed so hard.
Oh, Llewellyn.
Oh, it was so perfectly ironic.
Oh, always the high standards at Llewellyn.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Great.
Yeah.
They've never published anything terrible ever.
Yeah. It seemed oddly fitting, since Llewellyn isn't big on making people cite sources for their arguments either. So,
It's
anyway,
very much the Llewellyn House style.
Mm-hmm. So yeah. So just a final reminder, witches, as we wrap all this up, believing in witchcraft should never ever rob you of critical thinking or common sense. Just as science and religion are not mutually exclusive, nor are they, diametrically opposed, witchcraft and magic are not equivalent to or greater than science. Just because we're picking up and reviving or reconstructing old beliefs and traditions does not mean that we need to regress by leaps and bounds in our understanding of how the world works. And it also doesn't mean that we should ignore important modern advances for keeping ourselves and our families well. Witchcraft will not cure coronavirus, however much we wish it would. So just make sure you keep yourselves safe out there.
We're recording this like how far in advance?
Well, we're recording in June of 2020. This is probably going to come out in August, I think.
So I'm just saying, how crazy would it be if we managed to cure coronavirus with witchcraft in the meanwhile? I'm just saying, look how much egg is going to be on your face.
Well, you know what? I will happily eat like a mile's worth of crow if we manage to cure coronavirus purely with witchcraft before the end of the summer. I will happily pick up that fork because it will have been worth it to save that many lives. So,
that's not
no.
Everything's terrible and the world's on fire, folks. But on the upside, apparently red clover tea can fix it.
Oh, geez. Well, anyway. Trey, thanks so much for coming on the show today. We're definitely doing this again because I am having the best time. As we mentioned at the top of the show, Trey is one of the fabulous people involved in the Nerd and Tie podcast network. Trey, why don't you tell us a little about it?
Nerd and Tie Podcast Network is a Wisconsin-based podcast network, which we somehow let Bree on. That offers podcasts.
You called me.
I did. I mean, you're not the person on the network furthest away from Wisconsin. That's still Vink from
true.
Famicom Dojo. He lives in Japan.
Yeah, and I'm only in Virginia, so.
Yeah. So the Nerd and Tie Podcast Network, we have podcasts ranging from witchcraft to true crime to actual play role-playing game podcasts. You can find all of them at nerdandtie.com. You can find me on that network as I am the host of BS Free Witchcraft. I'm also the co-host of the Nerd and Tie Podcast, the flagship podcast that launched the network. Technically, On This Day with Trey features me, but I recorded all 366 episodes like in 2014, so like it just recycles episodes every day, but it's technically there. And of course, Stormwood and Associates, the actual play podcast I'm on, which I can't tell you I can't give you a good intro to what's going on because we haven't recorded the episodes that are going to be airing when this comes out yet. So, but all that can be found at nerdandtie.com. BS Free Witchcraft, if you want to find that specifically, also can be found at bsfreewitchcraft.com. You can find me on Twitter at TRAEGORN. You can find me on Tumblr at TRAEGORN.tumblr.com. Or you can find links to everything I do on the internet at trhonline.com. That's the ancient site which has many things on it that I am ashamed of that I will not take off the internet because it's good SEO. And then, of course, I have a Patreon if you want to support me and everything I do at patreon.com/TRAEGORN.
Fabulous. Thank you so much. And definitely check out Nerd and Tie podcasts. All of them are really, really fabulous. And if you're enjoying Hex Positive, please do go check out our sibling podcast, BS Free Witchcraft. It is loads of fun. If you've enjoyed Trey being Wiccan and curmudgeonly on the show this week, or this month, I should say, you can go and get that every month over on BS Free.
And I want to point out the show is not just about Wicca. It's about the whole modern witchcraft movement. I just preface that I am a Wiccan witch because,
yes,
if you can hear me complain about a lot of stuff. If you want to hear me complain about Wiccans, there are a bunch of episodes where I do that too. We're the worst.
The whole show is wonderful. There's so many episodes that I spend the entirety of it just sitting back and kind of, just like, yes, preach, say the thing, it's true and you should say it. So yeah, absolutely. So from me, from Trey, and from all of us out there in the internet spaces, witchlings, stay safe, wash your hands, and remember, always practice safe hex.
And join our Discord.
Hex Positive is a proud member of the Nerd and Tie Podcast Network. Check out everything they have to offer, including our sibling podcast, BS Free Witchcraft, over at nerdandtie.com. Intro and outro music by Kevin MacLeod. For all the latest updates, follow at Hex_podcast on Twitter. You can also follow me at Brina Guerin on Twitter and Instagram. For more information on my books, you can check out my WordPress and my Amazon author page. And if you'd like to support the show, please visit patreon.com/Brina Guerin. Stay safe, wash your hands, and remember, always practice safe hex.